We begin today in Iran, where nationwide protests sparked by the death in custody of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini are going into their third month, despite an intense crackdown by the government. More and more people are pouring onto the streets. Take a look at some of the latest images to emerge from Mahabad city in western Iran, an area dominated by the Kurds. The security forces have deployed armoured vehicles there and have been accused of targeting the region specifically. Mahsa Amini herself was Kurdish. Tear gas was fired, water cannon deployed, at least 4 demonstrators killed on Sunday alone. The western part of Iran is home to about 10 million Kurds. That's 10% of the country's population. Rights groups say the region has been a victim of discrimination even in normal times, but the recent protests have sparked more clampdowns in these areas than in the rest of the nation. Unusual scenes also erupted from a university in Tehran. The students staged a sit-in protest in front of the university president's office. This came after at least 9 students were arrested. The chants you can hear translate to "The student dies, he does not accept humiliation," and "The imprisoned student must be released." Protests in universities and schools are rare, but they have become common during the latest unrest. Students are voicing their concerns over the regime's brutal crackdown on its own people. Another university saw similar protests, the students chanting "Woman, Life, Freedom," a slogan that has become the core purpose for demonstrators. Local reports suggest 2 prominent Iranian actresses have now been arrested, accused of acting against the state. The 2 artists publicly supported the demonstrators and appeared in public without a headscarf. Protests have stretched into a third month, with human rights activists saying 410 protesters have been killed in the unrest so far. This includes 58 minors. Some 54 members of the security forces have also reportedly been killed, and more than 17,000 people have been arrested. At least 6 demonstrators have now been sentenced to death by Iran's judiciary. Authorities have not provided any details of those convicted. So for more on all of this, I am joined today by Lynn O'Donnell, columnist with Foreign Policy magazine and author. She joins us live from London. Lynn O'Donnell, thanks very much for being with us on the programme today. What is your sense of where this is all heading? I mean, we're moving into the third month of what increasingly looks like a popular uprising against the Iranian government. A much more serious threat to the Iranian government than previous waves of protests that have hit the country, isn't it?
Hi, Simon. Thanks for having me. I think you're right. Calling this a popular uprising is accurate. But as yet, there's no centrifugal leadership that we're seeing. It's still very disparate. It still seems to be although the demographic support is growing and geographically it's very widespread, there doesn't yet seem to be any forceful attempt to join the protests by industry. For instance, the very important petrochemical, oil and gas sector, and nor by the bazaar, which was very important the last time Iran was in revolutionary mode, by which I mean the wealthy traders, the people who control trade, basically. There's been some small and sporadic closures by small shopkeepers, and the bazaar in Tehran has closed probably more because of a fear of being caught up in violence than real support for what's going on. So I think, yes, it's popular, it's broad geographically and demographically, but as yet no support from industry, which I think is very important, or from the merchants in the bazaar. We've yet to see that. It's going on. It doesn't look like it's going to slow down or calm down anytime soon. So that may change. But I think that in itself is giving the leadership of Iran, which is under great threat and great pressure now, probably some cause for hope that things will die down and remain in their favour.
And the leadership of Iran, of course, ever since this began, has kind of blamed the other, if you like. We've heard on numerous occasions claims being voiced that these protests are all being orchestrated by foreign actors, by external forces. And we were talking there earlier about the scale of the crackdown that's taking place, particularly in Kurdish parts of Iran, by the authorities. Is the game plan here basically to blame external forces, you know, defined pretty broadly to include the Kurds, bearing in mind that Mahsa Amini herself was Kurdish? Is that the Iranian regime's game plan here?
Well, Simon, as you were saying before, there's been a fairly brutal crackdown on the Kurdish areas. There isn't just an ethnic divide, there is a religious divide. The Kurds are Sunni, whereas the regime is Shia. And so they've been pretty well discriminated against historically. The Kurds themselves are one of the biggest, if not the biggest, ethnic group globally that doesn't have its own nation, its own country, if you like. And so, yes, why not take this as an opportunity to crack down on the perceived enemy? Also, we've been hearing over the past couple of months from the regime blaming outside forces like the United States. It's always very easy. But in the last few days, I'm in London, here in the United Kingdom and in Canada, there have been very credible reports and statements made by the intelligence agencies that Iran itself is now going abroad to target journalists who work for Persian language news outlets based in those countries. Here in London, you have Iran International Television, which is broadcast inside Iran via satellite, and it's very popular. And it's been broadcasting over the past 2 months a lot of the footage that we have access to of brutal crackdown shootings, also what the demonstrators are doing, the burnings, the headscarf protests. And now the Iranians seem to be coming for the people outside the country who are responsible for getting that information to people inside Iran. The internet has been very harshly cracked. Basically, it's been cut off inside Iran. People don't have access anymore to WhatsApp or Signal. The internet is down. So getting information about what is actually happening to each other and to outside of Iran is very, very difficult. But now we have outside the headquarters here in London of Iran International TV, squad cars of anti-terrorist police. And some journalists who say that they have been targeted specifically are now under armed protection. So things are getting serious. And I think this sort of reaction by the Iranian regime is an indication of how much under threat they are starting to feel.
And there are reports, we should say, in West London of some of the businesses close to the offices of that broadcaster now telling their staff to stay away from the region as those threats intensify. Lynn O'Donnell, a columnist with Foreign Policy magazine and an author based in London, thanks very much for talking to us today. I hope we'll see you again.
Thank you, Simon.